Good morning and welcome to the IT and Sustainability panel session. Just want to thank the STTPA for having us here to talk about what we're up to when it comes to IT and sustainability. What's interesting about IT is it really has the ability to positively impact the social, economic, and environmental aspects of sustainability. But sustainability also has the ability to push IT to be innovative, to come up with new things to help achieve those sustainability goals. Today, we've got a number of three representatives of manufacturers today who are going to be talking about what their companies are doing around sustainability and IT. We have Francis Edmonds, who's head of sustainable impact at HP Canada. And Francis is going to be talking about what HP is doing around manufacturing the products, leveraging recycled plastics, which is really exciting and innovative. Willa Black, VP of Corporate Affairs from Cisco Canada, is going to be talking about an incredible collaboration project that Cisco runs that helps bridge the digital gap into the remote communities we have here in Canada. And finally, Robert Santin, who's the Director of OEM Business and the Microsoft Authorized Refurbisher program. And Robert's going to talk about what Microsoft is doing around sustainable procurement, manufacturing, and sourcing. So we've got a really exciting panel. The way the format's going to work is we're each going to have a brief presentation about what our companies are up to with respect to IT and sustainability. Then we're going to have a roundtable where we're going to have 4 topics that we've identified that we're going to talk about. And then after that, we're going to open it up to questions and answers from the audience. As we are presenting, please feel free to raise your hand if you do have a question. All of the panelists are okay with taking questions during the presentation. So please feel free to do so. Awesome. So my interest in IT actually came in the form of a community aspect in healthcare. And you see on the board here, Perel hand washing station, and you're probably thinking, like, what does that have to do with IT? Well, hospitals, one of the biggest concerns is infections and post-surgery infections. And so one of the most common sense ways to alleviate infections is by ensuring that your employees and healthcare providers are actually washing their hands. So a company leveraging Cisco technology was actually able to embed technology into their hand washing stations and into their infrastructure to be able to monitor healthcare professionals before and after they engage with a patient at the bedside level. So as a result of that technology being implemented, hand washing went up 98% and infections fell dramatically. And I really didn't realize how important infections and combating infections are in healthcare until I actually overheard my parents talking about a procedure that my dad was getting. And they were talking about 2 different hospitals and how one had a higher infection rate than the other. So I thought this was a really interesting way of how sustainability was implemented in the healthcare to save lives ultimately. Another great example of IT promoting sustainability is the addition and the creation of the 3D printer. And thank you, Francis, for sharing this with me. Francis shared this infographic with me earlier this year when I was preparing for a presentation. And what I love about it is it shows the impact that technology can have when it comes to manufacturing. And if we see on the left, we're looking at the original stand, and it was an aluminum machine stand. And we see through 3 iterations and going to 3D printing, the impact that we were able to have. 50% cost reduction, which is fantastic, a 93% waste reduction, and a 95% carbon footprint reduction. So another great example of how technology is able to positively impact in the environment. There are lots of examples around us of how IT and sustainability are interlinked, and there's really incredible synergies between the two. And on your way here, you probably saw some great examples of it, like clean renewable energy, electric cars, smart homes and buildings, and the sharing economy like Uber and Lyft. Reducing the paper trail by going digital, smart agriculture and vertical farming, as well as monitoring wildlife and the environment. And the last 2 are really great examples of how sustainability has pushed IT to be innovative. And we've made some incredible advances in those areas. For today, we're going to be talking about our company's relationships with sustainability. And some of the themes that we're going to be talking about are e-waste, so recycling and reuse, the circular economy, carbon footprint reduction, responsible sourcing and manufacturing, and using collaboration for good and community impact. So I'm going to go first, and I'm going to talk about Compugen and Compugen Finance. So I'm the Director of IT Asset Disposition Programs for Compugen. We also provide leasing and financing services. Our parent company is Compugen Inc., and they're the largest privately owned IT company in Canada, and they provide new products, services, and support into the enterprise space. We are the leasing, financing extension of that company, and as a result of that, we created an IT asset disposition program called Green for Good. And IT asset disposition is really the term for how does a company manage their end of first life IT assets. In the past, IT assets were not necessarily processed in an environmentally friendly way. And in 2018, the globe saw the largest proportion of e-waste go to landfill, and it was totaling close to 50 million metric tons, which is the equivalent of 9 pyramids of Giza or 4,500 Eiffel Towers. And this is an issue that's having a dramatic environmental impact. And what's encouraging today is you'll hear from 3 companies who are doing their part to mitigate the effect that e-waste is having to our environment. It's also the equivalent to 1.2 million trucks loaded up in a line, and it would run for 17,000 miles, which is equivalent to driving from New York, or flying, because you can't drive, flying to New York and Bangkok and back. So this is a big issue, and it's something that we need to take seriously. So our program, Green for Good, is all about providing our customers with those services around the pickup, the transfer, and the processing of their end-of-life IT assets. And our program really promotes reuse. We want to give those devices a second life. And as a result of that, we can actually pay our customers for those devices, and they actually end up generating a revenue source. And so we encourage those customers to donate that money back into the environment. To date, we've raised back into the community. To date, we've raised over $3.2 million, and we're supporting over 165 charities across North America. We've processed over 1.6 million IT assets. And for assets that are processed through our configuration center, we have a 92% reuse rate, which means on average only 8% is recycled. The rest is repurposed and given a second life. And because we put such a heavy emphasis on reuse, we knew we were providing additional goodness to the environment. We just didn't know how to quantify it. So we partnered with an environmental firm, and we became the first company in the world to be able to create verified carbon credits through our refurbishment and resale process. The carbon credits are classified as verified emissions reductions removals with the Clean Projects Registry, and they're all hosted on the Canadian Standards Association website. If you were to go to our CSA registry site, which is in the open public domain, you would see companies like the Bank of Montreal, Cooperators Life Insurance, BC Lotteries, City of Coquitlam, City of Surrey, Queen's University, as companies who are participating in our program and consuming and using our carbon credits to reduce their carbon footprint. So they're satisfying a business requirement, but also helping them achieve their corporate social responsibility and sustainability goals at the same time. As a result of that, we've got a lot of recognition. I won't talk about most of these awards, but the last one we just got a couple of weeks ago, we were a Diamond Award winner in the sustainability category around innovation at the Channel Daily News Innovation Awards. And we're also proud members of the B Corp community. And I'm just curious, because I do quite a bit of public speaking, and I always ask this question, how many people here are familiar with B Corps? If you can just raise your hand. Okay. That's great. This is definitely the highest percentage I've had. Generally, it's crickets, but that's fantastic. And if you're not familiar with B Corps, please look into them. They're incredible companies that build sustainability and CSR into their product and purpose. And it's a great organization to be a part of. And we're also members of the United Nations Global Compact. And I'm sure everyone here is familiar with those and the SDGs. Here's an example of an outcome that we're able to provide to one of our customers, the Bank of Montreal. And prior to joining our program, they were paying for IT asset disposition services up to $1 million a year. And we came along and we turned what was a cost, we turned it into a revenue source. So we saved them millions of dollars, but we also generated over $1 million for them over the last 5 years simply by trading in their IT assets. And they were generous enough to donate over $500,000 to local charities across North America. But they're also self-generating verified carbon credits. So we've been able to help them satisfy their business requirement around what do we do with all of this e-waste across North America, manage to do that adheres to their info security requirements, but also provide them with the ability to benefit the community and the environment. But at the end of the day, we need more innovation. And what's exciting is you're going to hear some great stories today from our panelists around what their companies are doing around this topic. And I thought this was really timely because of the Olympics that are coming up this summer in Tokyo. Japan is using the metals as a way to raise awareness around e-waste and the global impact that it can have. All of the medals that are going to be handing out at the Olympics are going to be created through a trade-in program of electronics. So they're going to be taking all the precious metals out of the electronics that they're going to get traded in, and they're going to use those metals to create the Olympics. So next summer when you're watching the Canadians take gold in the various events, just remember that those metals came from an e-waste program that the Japanese government was using to raise awareness around this problem. We also became the first company in the world to sell carbon neutral refurbished computers. And we know based on our research that consumers today are looking for businesses to provide sustainable products for their consumption. And we thought that, you know, selling a refurbished computer already is a sustainable product because you're promoting reuse, but we took it a step further and we're applying our carbon credits against each of the devices that we're selling, making it carbon neutral for its second life. So these are just some examples of what Compugen and Green for Good are doing around sustainability and IT. So Francis Edmond is going to speak first on behalf of HP Canada and going to be talking about all the great things that HP is doing around sustainability.
Okay, thank you. So it's an interesting story, metals coming from used electronics being put into metals for the Olympics. Now, I would argue that that's actually an easy thing to do because metals have a value. You can resell metals, they can be put into many different things. They're easy to recycle. Plastics, not so much. And probably, okay, show of hands, how many people are concerned about plastics in the environment? I don't think there's a Canadian who isn't. And we've seen some pretty bad horror stories. And the reason for it is there is no market for used plastics. Used plastics, when you recycle electronics, excuse me, come out in a mixed format. And plastics are not easy to separate based on their physical and chemical properties, unlike metals. And that's why we have the used plastics problem that we do. So for many years, Canadians and Americans have been exporting their used plastic problems off into the developing world. And only recently did China put up what's called the Green Wall to stop plastics being imported. They're still diverting into many of the other Far East nations, but there's a general consensus today that we need to do a better job of managing our own plastics in the countries that we're in. So I'm going to show you some exciting examples around how Canadian know-how is actually helping HP tackle that very issue. But I do want to point out that HP is Canada's most sustainable technology company. And I would not say that without giving you some proof points. So there's a website URL there that you can go and check up as to how I prove that to you. But that's an important thing. So we hear a lot today about purpose-driven companies, and you know, most of our youth coming out of university and colleges actually today want to work for a purpose-driven company. And there's some data out there that says they will in fact take a pay cut to work for a purpose-driven company. So it's kind of the thing today. 80 years ago, HP's founding fathers said the real reason HP exists is to make a difference. So it was pretty unconventional in those days. In fact, it was heretical because in those days, the sole purpose of a business was to make money for shareholders. So for 80 years, we've been hiring people who wanted to make a difference. And I think you can see that in some of the things I'm going to show you today. So let's come back to the plastics. So 8 million tons of plastic going into the oceans every year. We could argue about how it's getting there. We could argue about the ways to stop it getting there. But one of the ways to stop it getting there is to find a use for those plastics, as I previously said. The estimates are that if we don't do something, that by 2050, there'll be more plastics than fish in the oceans by weight. So obviously, the concern that Canadians have is a valid concern. There's probably an overfishing issue there too, but we're not going to get into that one. But yeah, there's valid cause for concern. So HP decided to tackle the plastics recycling issue over 15 years ago. And when we went globally looking for a vendor who could help us with this issue, we actually ended up in Montreal. And it's Canadian know-how that has enabled HP to reach the pretty amazing things that we've been doing. And what we did was we piloted what's called closed-loop plastics. We said, can we take the plastics that are coming out of our products, and in the first instance it was ink cartridges, can we take those cartridge plastics and put them back into cartridges? Today, most plastics, if they are recycled at all, as opposed to being burnt or put in a landfill or thrown in the ocean, are downcycled. They're not put back into the same type of product. So this is actually called upcycling, which is kind of weird, right? But it's just an example of how bad our recycling is for plastics today. So we worked very hard on this, and it took us a long time. Over the 15-year period, what we've been able to do is produce recycled plastic resins that are of equivalent quality to virgin plastics for the same price as virgin plastics, but have a much lower carbon footprint, over 40% lower carbon footprint. And you go, whoop-de-doo, that's pretty cool, HP. So I would say, yeah, that's great. But my question to you is, if we can do this with Canadian know-how, why aren't more companies doing it? Anybody want to suggest a reason?
Business process change, like it means you'd have to change how you do business.
Yeah, so business process change. And you know, when we have global supply chains, this is no mean feat. People think it's pretty easy to do. And I'm going to show you some examples of some products where we've started to integrate some of these plastics. And somebody said to me, well, Frances, why don't you just make everything with recycled plastics? Holy moly. That would be huge. I'm going to show you what our goal is in a second. So business process change is absolutely one of them. There's a resistance, there's a stickiness in making changes at this scale. What else?
No one's actually forcing anyone to do it. So consumers aren't going out and looking for everything that's using recycled plastic.
Exactly. So we've spent 30 years telling Canadians if they just did recycling, we'd fix our sustainability problems. Yeah, that's pretty much what we've done. But we forgot that last piece, which is you do recycling, but where does that stuff go? If there's no market for it because there's no demand for products with recycled content in it, it doesn't go anywhere. You have to create the markets in our capitalist society to do that. So I'm going to come to the conclusion that we need to be buying better. But let's just look at some more of this data. So we don't get enough cartridges back, so we have to add in plastics from other sources. And the first plastics chemistry that we did was PET. So we've been adding in used PET drinking water bottles. And we're at the point where we're using 1 million a day. And if you laid them end to end, all the bottles we've used to this point, they would stretch to the moon and back and more. So this is not a small scale little pilot thing. This is big business for us. We're going at this in a very meaningful, significant way. And you've got some more numbers here of the number of cartridges that we've actually made. But we didn't stop there. We didn't sit down and say, well, job done. What more could we do? So when word got out that we were doing this, we were approached by some nonprofits in Haiti. Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, absolutely devastated after the earthquake. And they said, we've got some informal waste collection for bottles in Haiti, water bottles. Do you think you could take those water bottles and put them through your process? And we said, hey, let's try it. So I'm going to show you a video now of the impact that this is having. Hopefully this will play.
C'est pays nié. Pendant après 12 janvier, nous venons vivre en battante. Je ne sais personne, c'est mon cap. Continue, c'est mon maman, c'est mon papa. Après, moi, c'est à prendre un bail pour arriver plus devant. Moi, je ramasser, mettre dans le ballon, me voyez les ça. Nous faire plus moment, plus mouvement, plus passer ça pour nous capables de nettoyer le pays avec Pogina et la ramasser. Moi, je joins tous les petits amis qui viennent maintenant. C'est là-dedans nous payons l'école, c'est là-dedans nous payons caille, c'est là-dedans nous voyons l'école, c'est là-dedans nous faisons toute bagaille net. Nous avons changé dans la vie. Moi, je suis entré dans sa bouteille qui fait nous devons payer, nous payons caille. Ok, après ça, même dans le plastique là, et puis nous venons continuer, moi, je vais l'école et puis nous continuer avant. Moi, parce que bon Dieu, moi, je suis capable de dire c'est ça que fait, moi intéressé.
So that was pretty cool. And when I called up our vendor in Montreal, when I realized how much work he'd done to make this happen, and I said, Jean-Luc, you walk on water, this is amazing stuff. And he said, yes, but Francis, we could do so much more. So that is my challenge, to create a market where we could do so much more. So what happened after this was we figured out that people wanted more of this, and we started to launch some products that contained those closed-looped and ocean-bound plastics. So earlier this year, we put out the world's first display with ocean-bound plastics, and then quickly followed by the HP Elite Dragonfly, which is not only a beautiful notebook with a 24-hour battery life, it actually contains the world's first notebook with ocean-bound plastic in it. And I have to tell you that even after 15 years of doing this closed-loop recycling, this thing is generating more buzz than I would have believed possible. In fact, so much so I can't even bring one to show you today because we don't have any available, which I would like to do. So we combined that with this year launching the best in the industry, 30% total across all of our portfolio recycled content goal. And we do not know how we're going to make this goal. But what we do know is the 15 years of investment in recycling plastics technology that we have invested in to get us to the point where we can, including the process change to get the supply change that we need, supply chain change, will help us win this. And we're pretty confident we're going to meet it. But the challenge is we want other people to come with us. So we deliberately did not make the work that we do with this Montreal vendor exclusive. We said, if you can go and get any of our competitors to do this, we would love that, because we believe everybody should be doing this. So hint, hint to the other vendors in the room. So we need some changes to happen, and we need them to happen fast. If we're going to meet our Paris targets, we've only got 10, 12 years to fix these problems. We have the technology. We know how to do this. Circular economy, where we take these plastics and keep them going around, we calculate that the plastics in our ink cartridges have gone around 7 or 8 times by now. We have the technology to do this. So a recent survey, 96% of CEOs globally agreed that the circular economy was a pretty important thing for their business. Yet, only 18% are changing their business models as we speak. And this is because their customers are not asking them to do this. So what will it take to change this? We need to have more people, from a consumer to businesses to governments, thinking about how they procure technology or any other product. And we have a world where every economic transition is not just a financial one, it includes social and environmental considerations as well. So I'll leave you with a quote from one of our founding fathers, that it's down to all of us. We have the technology we need, we can get working on this, we've proven the concept. I'd encourage you to all get out there and start spreading the word about this, and we can make the change that's necessary. So thank you.
Good morning, everybody. That was a fantastic presentation, Francis. I wrote down almost every word you said. Good morning, everybody. My name is Willa Black, and I am responsible for corporate social responsibility and corporate affairs at Cisco Canada. And how do I make this work? Hang on here. Thank you. There we go. Perfect. That's great. So how many people here know what Cisco is? Or does. Few of you, great. Okay, so we are the worldwide leader in internet networking. So we manufacture and produce and integrate all the hardware and software that really makes the internet come to life. In fact, 85% of the world's internet traffic travels over Cisco systems, and we operate in 160 countries. And when we first looked at establishing our CSR program in Canada, which is about 10 years ago, we decided that if we were going to do something, if we were going to tackle a problem, we should probably take all the things that we do best, all of our expertise in engineering, all of our products and services, all of our knowledge and our ecosystem, and we should try to leverage those resources to solve a problem. And then we said, okay, so if we're going to do all that, well, what problem would we tackle? And we began a 2-year journey in Canada to take a look at some of the larger social issues in this country. And we have a technology, a collaboration technology called telepresence. So it is super high definition video conferencing that really challenges addresses the challenges of time and distance, and makes you feel as though you're in the same room with a person. It's all life size. And we happen to serve a lot of the telecom, satellite, cable providers in this country, including all of those that operate up in the north. And so we started to kind of think about that a little bit, and we started to sort of think about communities in this country where technology could have an impact, where collaboration technology could have an impact. And it didn't take us very long to land on the struggles in Indigenous communities in the remote north. And I probably don't need to tell all of you in this room, but this is 6% of the Canadian population are Indigenous, and yet they have a disproportionate amount of addiction, of incarceration rates, of suicide rates. Nunavut has the highest youth suicide rate per capita globally, 11 times the national average. Think about that. That's higher than the Congo. That's higher than Haiti. That's higher than any of these countries, and it's in this country. There's also a high level of addiction, of intergenerational trauma, dropout rates in schools of about 70% by the time kids hit grade 9. All of these issues are compounded by the fact that it's very, very challenging to get the resources that are needed into these communities. Teacher turnover is really, really high. It's hard to live up there. It's dark, it's cold, kids don't come to school, there's acute cultural differences, and there's a lot of, as I said, a lot of social challenges. And when I was up in Nunavut for the very, very first time, it was shocking to me to realize in this territory where we have, 11 times the suicide rate versus the South, there was not 1 minute of psychiatric service available for youth. Not a single psychiatrist in the entire territory. Someone who would sort of fly up every 6 weeks and stay for 2 weeks and write prescriptions for Ritalin, but that was about it. So we thought, okay, what if we could figure out a way using technology to get these resources up into these communities? What if we could deliver psychiatric support? What if we could deliver mental health and wellness? What if we could support those teachers? What if we could bring those kids educational opportunities not available to them right now? What if we could take them on museum tours? What if we could expose them to mentors? What if we could help with language perpetuation? All these great needs in the community. And so we met with Mary Simon, who at the time was the leader of the Inuit Peoples of Canada, phenomenal woman. And we had her do a demo, and she came in and we said, Mary, look, all of this would be possible. We could figure out a way to get all of these services up there. And she said, anything that's gonna make the classroom more dynamic, anything that's gonna help those kids, I'm all in. So in 2012, I went to this school in Iqaluit. This is the Axkarneet Middle School. And I went up with an engineer, and we worked with the satellite provider up there to get the bandwidth that we needed to make it work. And we put in a telepresence unit, and we started very modestly. We connected those kids to a researcher at Carleton University, and she was awesome. And she did things, that like sizzled and fizzled and boiled and colored gases and all dissecting frogs. The kids had never seen a frog before. And the kids were automatically intrigued, and they started coming to school. And the teachers, within seconds, within days, were like, oh my God, 40% of the kids in my class have fetal alcohol syndrome. I've never been trained. Can you get us someone to train us? The kids in Iqaluit want to connect with the kids in Arviat. Is it possible for us to do that? Oh my gosh, could we get some literacy support? Could we get some a chance to visit an aquarium? Can we? And the answer was yes, of course we could. And we got up to about 4 or 5 schools in Nunavut, and then we added a couple of schools in Ontario. And we were frantically trying to get all these content providers pulled together. And then I remember sitting at the office one night and the phone rang. It was about 7 o'clock. And a teacher from one of our schools in Nunavut said, Willa, the prom's next week. I said, yeah. And he said, the girls want to know how to do updos. Can you get us a hairdresser? And I thought, it was sort of penny drop for me. And I thought, wow, the schools all want in, and these schools should be connected. And this program really it's more than just getting resources into these schools. This is a program about equity of opportunity. And this goes so far beyond reconciliation. This is about human rights. And we had scores and scores of schools on the wait list. And I went to my boss at the time and I said, look, there's no way that we're going to be able to scale this up at Cisco. There's 600 Indigenous schools across the country. Every single one of them should be connected. We need to spin this out as a dedicated charity. And so we'd never actually done that before at Cisco, and it was a little painful, and all the lawyers' heads exploded. However, we had a couple of really great champions internally. And so in 2016, the program was spun out as a dedicated charity. And today, I'm so proud to say, this year, Connected North is going to operate in about 75 schools from the Yukon to Nunavut. We have 15,000 kids in our network. Last year, we delivered 1,500 virtual sessions on through hundreds and hundreds of content providers. Virtually every single museum in Canada now has joined the network. The Toronto International Film Festival joined the network. We have oh my gosh, George Brown College is teaching cooking lessons. We have Indigenous mentors from across the country talking to our schools. We have authors, and we have museum tours, and we have behind the scenes tours of the Rogers Centre. We even have folks from the Globe Theatre in London, England, who do live improv with our kids. It's an incredible, incredible journey. One of the things we realized as we were moving through this whole process, and it's been an incredible learning journey for us at Cisco, this program, I said it is about equity. When you visit these communities, and I've been to about 18 of them now, and over the course of the last decade, you realize that when you see some of the suffering of these kids, the lack of resources, it's not good enough for some of these children to see a psychiatrist once every 6 months for 10 minutes. With some of the issues that they're facing, they need sometimes, certainly weekly touch points or interactions, but often daily touch points or interactions. And that's what Connected North does. It is a means, virtually, using technology to reach these kids with the resources that they need when they need them. Everything that you see in blue is what is delivered virtually. And so the way it works is that we have 25 full-time people at Connected North. Half of them are Indigenous. And at the beginning of the week, they're each assigned a number of schools. They phone their schools. They say, where do you want to go? What do you want to do this week? And do you want to go to visit the Vancouver Aquarium? We can do that. Oh, well, one of our kids had a really rough week. She'd really love a yoga lesson. Okay, well, we can do that too. We do private lessons on all sorts of things. So everything in blue, the virtual field trips, cultural exchange, connecting kids in the North to other kids in the North, connecting kids in the North to kids in the South, we do that. Role models and mentors. It's so important that kids see themselves in the success of others who look just like them. Future Pathways. This is a program funded by RBC, who's an amazing partner for us. It's a $1 million program with a goal of encouraging kids in high school to consider post-secondary. We work with 7 colleges and universities all across across the country to make sure they do a better job of intake, and also to demystify the experience for students so they know a little bit more. We have on-site virtual campus tours, for example, before they go. And then mental health and wellness. We can't deliver clinical services in the classroom, but we can deliver anti-bullying, we can deliver self-esteem building, and we have a variety of partners that help with that. Everything in green is what we do actually in community, because it's important that we build those relationships. So community engagement, we go up twice a year to every single community we operate in, just as touch points, and to meet new teachers. Teacher turnover is rampant, and but Connected North is the constant. So we had one school last year, Lac Seul, every single teacher left, and we went in and did all the training to make sure that they could start in the fall, you know, with the right training. Summer leadership programs and grants. So all the kids that we meet in the blue part, we spend a week in community and we run special leadership training for them. And then teacher engagement and digital skills building. This is a really, really important point. This is a new model. This is a new way of doing things. This is leveraging technology to address a major social issue in this country that has never been done before. So it's hard work when you try to launch something like, it's very complex problems, can take a long, long time. I say all the time to the folks at Cisco, we're in this for the long haul. This is a 10-year exercise, 10, 20, 30-year exercise as we scale this new model. We're hoping within the next 18 months to be in 100 schools. That is a sixth of all Indigenous schools. We have another 78 right now on the wait list. So we will get there, but it takes a village. And then so teacher engagement and digital skills building, we're training teachers across the North on how to leverage this technology. It's not hard, but we send our engineers up there. We have a whole group. Compugen is a wonderful partner of this program. Compugen just helped us upgrade our entire platform that the Connected North Network is delivered on, which is just great. And then literacy resources. We realized going into these schools, there's no books there. I mean, there's old stuff, old National Geographics from 1975. So with a grant from TD Bank and with the support of First Book Canada, every single Connected North school now gets a brand new library with new books of their choosing, which is great. So one of the things that I've really learned, and I'm reasonably new to this social impact space, is that if you want to tackle a big, huge problem, you really can't do it on your own. You have to understand, you know, all of the prongs of the model and where you need expertise and resourcing and skill sets. And so this is our model for Connected North. So Cisco is the network partner. We're still very heavily engaged in the whole build out of the network and adding schools on. Service providers, bandwidth is a huge challenge across the North, but we work with all of the service providers, most of them actually, to ensure that when we go into a school, we can turn up the dial on the bandwidth so that they can get a quality experience. Community partners, working very closely with the government of Nunavut or the Saskatchewan Prince Albert Grand Council. We work with First Nations all across the country. I should say also, we work on a demand basis. The communities approach us. We have not yet had a single failed experience in any school. We're very proud of that. And then there's, of course, the schools themselves, research partners. We have been able to metric this very, very carefully and thoroughly. In fact, the University of Toronto Advanced Learning Technology Lab did our most fulsome piece of research where we were looking at resilience. You know, if that was the goal we set, to help these kids be more successful in school and in life, were we achieving that goal? And so in a deep study that they did, we went into 3 northern communities in Ontario. We did a pre and post. We looked at kids after 6 months in the program, averaging 2 to 3 sessions a week, and we asked them how excited they were about their future. 64% of kids said they were very excited about their future, and our benchmark was 14. So just by exposing them to different opportunities, just by trying to understand where their passions lay and really trying to develop that and building their self-esteem, it proved highly effective. Content providers, we have hundreds. I have brought a sample of our catalog that the teachers pick sessions from. If we don't have what a school wants, we build it. It's highly customized. Program supporters, we raised $3 million a year to fund this program. The government of Nunavut last year just stepped up with full funding for all 43 schools. We're in 30 right now, so we're scaling very quickly. And then governments, when you take on a complicated project like this, the goal at the end of the day is sustainability. And so there's a couple of ways that you can address that, and we're looking at two. First of all, we're moving to a self-serve platform. So the teachers will be able to go in and book their own sessions. So they won't need us to be that concierge service. They'll of course still give us input about the types of programming that they want, but ultimately at the end of the day, it will be great if they could manage it on their own. So we've got one school now that is at that point. The other element though is bringing governments in, because governments also tackling these sorts of large issues. And if you can bring private sector know-how, very similar to what we just saw with HP, if you can leverage that expertise, that resourcing, then there's an opportunity for government to match your effort and help you scale it faster. So that's certainly been the case with us. We have funding now from the province of Ontario. BC government is very, very close. Government of Nunavut is fully funding government of Ontario. And as I mentioned, and the federal government has also put some funding into this. And this is just sort of a sample of all of the different organizations that we work with. It is a big ecosystem of partners. And here's just a few examples of some of our sessions. The NHL is one of our partners. There you see Brian Truche speaking to 17 schools, which is great. There is our lovely fellow, Jerome, from the Globe Theatre in London, England. So he's with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and he's teaching kids how to swear in Old English, and which he loves doing. And then we work with the Indigenous chef at George Brown College. We fully outfitted their kitchens there with the equipment so they can broadcast into the schools. And there is Paulette Bourgeois, who's the author of the Franklin books. She does part of our author series. And all of this is captured in our session menu. I brought a couple with me. We send these out to the teachers at the beginning of the year, and the teachers, go through them. We have instructions on how to leverage the program, how to pick the sessions, and then they'll say, okay, great. I mean, I would love to do the boats and buoyancy session Tuesday at 2 o'clock. We set the whole thing up. All they have to do Tuesday at 2 o'clock is press a green button, and there it appears. And there's just a couple more examples of a few sessions in action. This is a great puppet theater in Toronto that teaches kids self-esteem building and anti-bullying through puppetry. The former Governor General was a huge supporter of this program, and he did a lot of work with us. And here he is delivering a keynote to some teacher PD for all the teachers of the Kikitani region. And that's Mind Center School. That's an example of a Classroom Connect, a school in Nunavut with a classroom in Grafton, Ontario. And this is my last slide. I made the point that when you take on an issue like this, we are not going to solve the problems in the North overnight. We're not going to address the poverty. We're not going to magically wave a wand and ensure that we have 100% attendance at these schools. However, we are absolutely making progress in terms of these kids, their self-worth, their performance in school. And it's been a pretty quick journey. We began our community research phase in 2011. We launched in pilot in 2013. That's when we did the work with the U of T. We came out of both the pilot and research in early 2014. We launched formally in April. Then we scaled to 7 schools. That's when we transitioned the program to a charity. And since then, the growth has just been rapid. And we've just been adding content providers and schools as we go. So that is it for me. I guess I will say that the value that the private sector brings is in looking at these new models. We are at the forefront of a lot of R&D, a lot of innovation. We can apply those to some of these countries' biggest challenges. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Willa. That was fantastic. It's really exciting to see what Cisco is doing around collaboration for good. So up next, we're going to have Robert Santin from Microsoft, who's going to talk about Microsoft efforts around IT and sustainability. Thank you.
Awesome work. Thank you. And thank you for making time for me to talk about Microsoft's sustainability program and progress. At Microsoft, products are a reflection of the people who make them and the people who use them. That's why our team puts their heart and soul into building products that are of the highest quality and experience, and why we continually push to reduce the impact of our products on the environment. As we grow our devices business, we strive to use more renewable resources, hold suppliers to higher ethical and labor standards, and reduce our carbon footprint. The passion of our customers and of our team has had incredible results this past year. We've exceeded our 2020 target for package recyclability of greater than 80% by 8 points. We've certified 825 carbon neutral Xbox consoles. They're the first consoles that are carbon neutral in the world. And we've set a science-based target for Scope 3 carbon reduction by 2030. Moving forward, we strive to do more. Last month, our Chief Environmental Officer, Lucas Joppa, confirmed Microsoft's aim to reduce carbon emissions in its value and supply chain by at least 30% by 2030. That beats the Paris Accord targets by 25%. And we'll continue to look at those targets and try to beat them going forward. As I go through the program, or as I go through my slides here, you'll see I pulled out some of the highlights from our plan, and from our results. First, to track progress, Microsoft aligns with the UN sustainability goals, and we drive continuous improvement across all of these 17 goals. As you know, these goals are to improve people's quality of life. They foster equitable growth in the economy, and they protect the environment by reducing carbon emissions by 20% by 2030. At the end of the presentation, you'll see a list of all the contributions we've made across the 17 goals in the past year. On this slide, you'll see our device environmental principles. These are the principles we use in everything that we build. And we're continually identifying ways to reduce carbon emissions and make our products more environmentally friendly. On the right-hand side of that chart are the product regulations that come out year by year. Last year, 515 regulations came out, 300 we identified as being able to be implemented in our products, and we implemented 136 of those immediately. We strive to implement these as quickly as possible into our chain to be good environmental stewards. Another key focus area for us is the sustainable product lifestyle, the circularity gap that Frances brought up in her discussion. The gap is, you know, what are we reusing and recycling versus what are we pulling back out of the harvesting from the earth, from our planet, and we're trying to close that off as much as possible so that, like HP and like what Frances was saying, we can just recycle our products and put them back into products instead of pulling things out of the environment. In 2014, we adopted the responsible sourcing of raw materials policy, and that guides all our programs and approaches. The policy extends right to our supplier code and conduct to raw materials extraction and harvesting processes in support of the human rights, labor, health and safety, environmental protection, and business ethics. This policy covers all minerals and materials, and it goes across every country, regardless of origin. Responsible sourcing and manufacturing. We are committed to delivering innovation in manufacturing while minimizing the impact on the planet. In recent years, we've made a huge investment in Power BI and IoT, and it gives us near real-time monitoring of our global manufacturing sites to quickly identify and resolve issues, in particular, any waste in the form of scrap or excess. So saving our world's resources. As well, we go downstream and we work with our suppliers. We encourage them to declare carbon emissions, reduced targets, and other achievements. 83% of our suppliers provide reporting regularly. That's 95% of our spend, our supplier spend, and you can see there on the chart. Last year, we reduced our carbon emissions by 12.5 million metric tons, and we hope to increase that again this year. As I mentioned in my opening, we've made good strides in reducing sustainable packaging. We beat our goal by almost 8% in the past year, and so we've just raised the number up in 2020. There's the goals that you can see, and hopefully that gets us closer to 100% recyclable packaging in a quicker time frame. The customer use phase. So this is post building the units and people using our products out in the channel. You can see here, since our introduction of the Surface Pro in February 2013, we've been able to reduce the power, the consumption that the Surface Pro is using by 50% while increasing the performance of the unit by 4 times. So it's a focus on engineering, focus on the tools, bringing the power down, not the consumption down, the power consumption down, while increasing the power of the units to meet ever-increasing needs. We've done the same with the Xbox One X, where the power consumption's gone up 20 times, but we've been able to minimize the growth in power consumption to 20% year over year. Lastly, end-of-life management. We provide a robust repair service and refurbishment process. In the coming slides, I'll talk about a program that I specifically run here in Canada. It's called the Microsoft Authorized Refurbisher program that Compugen's part of as well. And this is really our reuse program. Worldwide, we work with the largest refurbishers. We set strict standards for how they refurbish the product, how they install the software, and all with a goal of driving a strong second life of units. Now, this benefits the environment because, as we all know, it takes a lot of resources to build a computer initially. So if you can use it for 6 years, 10 years, the more use you get out of it, the more you're maximizing those resources that you've taken from the earth. Last year, Canadian authorized refurbishers refurbished 930,000 PCs. We feel that that's the equivalent to planting 1.5 million trees or driving a Honda Fit 1.35 billion kilometers, which is to Mars and back a couple of times, I think. So, as well as benefiting the, oh, there we go. Sorry about that, I missed the slide. As well as benefiting the environment, we also benefit several constituencies. You know, there's a lot of schools that don't have computers or don't have enough computers for all their kids. By buying refurbished computers, by giving them access to refurbished computers, they can do that. They can get computers, or they can have computers for all the kids in their classrooms. There's many charities that don't have the computers to run their operations and their donations and track all the different things they need to track. And so these constituencies might not otherwise get a PC were it not for the refurbishing market. So it's a true win-win-win. It's a virtuous cycle that we're very proud of. Thank you. And that's the chart of the progress we made up against the 17 goals.
Thanks, Robert. Okay, well, thank you very much, panelists. That was fantastic. It's nice to see, you know, the approaches that each of your organizations are taking around sustainability and community benefit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the panelists a few questions, and then we're going to move into more of a roundtable conversation, and then we'll conclude with audience questions. So, Robert, I think we'll start with you since you just finished. So the MAR program, the Microsoft Authorized Refurbisher program, which we're a part of, is a fantastic example of companies promoting product life extension and reuse. But promoting reuse would impact new hardware sales. And we know Microsoft is a manufacturer of new hardware like the Surface Pro and Book. So why does Microsoft promote the MAR program?
Yes, that's right. As I mentioned, there's many people that might not be able to afford a computer or have access to a computer, and certainly there's certain segments that can't get enough computers for all the people in their groups, like schools, as an example. At the end of the day, we feel that the MAR program allows Microsoft to execute on its mission, which is to empower everyone everywhere to achieve more. So it gives them access to a computer, it gives them access to the software that we build, and it helps them empower themselves and grow and develop.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
Can I just jump in there?
Absolutely.
I think a thing that didn't come across properly here is that Microsoft is authorizing the use of their software in refurbished computers. So it doesn't just have to be a Microsoft product.
Thank you.
Which is actually bigger than what it came across as, I think. So I just wanted to make sure that you're getting the credit that you're due here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and as we know, with shrinking budgets in the education system, providing schools with access to lower cost devices like refurbished computers gives those students the access to the technology that we need. School classrooms are changing, as we know. You don't see chalkboards and textbooks in classrooms anymore. You're seeing smart boards and tablets. So it's really important that we're able to provide the education system, the public education system, with low-cost resources like refurbished technology.
And can I add one more point?
You sure can.
You forgot to mention, which is when you sell a refurbished computer, you sell it with a warranty.
That's correct.
And again, that gives that validity to a refurbished computer. A lot of people are, well, it's a lot cheaper. I could, and if I can get the software package on it, then that's a really economical way to go. But I'm not sure because, it could break down or whatever. But offering that warranty through the Green for Good program or whatever is just fantastic. So it really generates a good quality secondhand market, which is essential. And your premise there that maybe it's eating into new sales, I don't think it does at all. I think there's a whole market out there that can't afford a new one. So,
Yeah, thank you. Robert, just one more question for you. We saw all the great things that Microsoft is doing around, sustainable manufacturing. What is Microsoft doing around the community to benefit the community?
A key of our sustainability plan is to hold suppliers to higher ethical and labor standards. We participate also in efforts like PACE in Nigeria, where it can improve the environment and the economies of these communities. So through PACE, we're working with the Nigerian government, and HP is part of this effort as well, to work through the waste and recycle the goods and sell them, much like what we saw in Haiti. Recycling plastics, which is an economical benefit, and it's also good for the environment. So we're trying to create that environment, and it's good for the local community. As a specific example that I would like to call out the work we've done with PACT, Microsoft joined with PACT in a 3-year project a couple of years back, in 2015, and we launched the Children Out of Mining project. This project uses interventions that are embedded in the communities and local institutions to address the economic and social root causes of child labor in mining. And we put a lot of effort, and since 2015, we've showed a 97% reduction in child labor.
Wow. Oh, that's fantastic.
As an example.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Francis, I got a question for you. Do you believe there's a role for local governments to influence the corporate responsibility of the private sector?
I think there's a huge role. They're a big customer for the private sector. So just looking at how they buy and what they buy, an example of leading into the circular economy is instead of buying a good, buy it as a service. And that way the manufacturer is responsible for the longevity and quality of that product. They're going to build a higher quality product and one that requires less repairs. And then responsible for making sure it has a second or third life. And it just brings that circularity into it. The circular economy cannot work with individual actors. It requires everybody in the chain to be playing a part.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. One more question for you. I really like what HP is doing, putting recycled plastics back into manufacturing of new devices. Are you able to share what's next for HP around this topic?
Yeah. Well, if we can meet the 30% goal, that'll be a big stretch topic for us. But I really think sharing the desire to do it and encouraging our competitors to do more on this. I'd like to see Microsoft matching a 30% goal, for instance, and then we can jointly go at this. Maybe we'd run out of used plastics then. I don't know. Because jointly we're using a lot of plastics. We could absolutely be doing that. So I think earlier this year we put out an announcement about forestry, and one of the things is absolutely protecting areas of forests, looking at working with WWF to set science-based targets for forest conservation, but more importantly to me was a collaborative around how we as business, industry, government, nonprofit can come together to do better on forest conservation. So it's that collaborative thing that HP has done for many, many years.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. One last question. I talked quite a bit about e-waste, and I'm just curious to know, what is HP doing around the topic of e-waste today?
Well, our Take Back and Recycling program called HP Planet Partners is nearly 30 years old. So we've been doing it for a while. I think where we see it going as we push towards the circular economy is that you don't end up with e-waste because the life cycle, the full life cycle and second and third life is actually now part of our ecosystem. So because if customers are buying as a service, they'll never need to actually be any e-waste because we'll know where every asset is and it will come back to us. So that's my long-term goal, and we're reorienting our entire business to be circular. We don't want to sell boxes anymore. We want to sell services. That's
fantastic. Thank you. Willa, thank you so much for that incredible overview of Connected North. It's a great organization, and one of the stats that I loved hearing was the shift from 14 to 64% belief in their futures. What made Cisco want to get started in a project like Connected North?
Well, I think it gets back to what I said about our industry being very uniquely placed to really look at these new technology-based models. And we alone could do this. It's so funny. I remember going up for the very first time I was in Iqaluit and meeting SSI Micro, the satellite provider, looking at them saying, what do you guys do for your CSR? And they said, well, I said, how do you like to turn up the dial a little bit? And ex-Garnet, they're like, yeah, we could do that. And then very quickly, I think we started to understand at Cisco the power of the ecosystem. And that if you look at issues like Indigenous capacity building in schools, like the delivery of mental health services, and you can figure out a way to deploy technology to address those issues. It's extraordinary when you start to draw on the ecosystem, how you can put a program together. And I think all of the folks at this table, we have that kind of executional capacity in our DNA. We know how to get things done. We have phenomenal certified program managers. And so we really brought this program management philosophy to our CSR, to our social impact. We actually run the team within the sales organization like a dedicated kind of business almost. So I think the reason we got involved is because we saw that we had a unique capability to bring to bear, and we understood our obligation to do that.
That's great. Yeah, no, definitely appreciate that. So thank you. Why should companies go to the trouble of adopting corporate social responsibility? What are the benefits?
I think we've seen today there are enormous resources, innovation, R&D, executional capacity that can be harnessed for really profound change. I mean, we've seen some amazing examples, and governments can't do it alone. And more, I spent a lot of the better part of last year in Ottawa on these topics, and there is such a willingness now to work in collaboration with the private sector through matching programs or through collaborative ventures or social impact funds to really figure out, okay, how can we take best-in-class solutions and how can we deploy those in a way that is organized, that is efficient, that we can metric, and that is replicable. And so, yeah, I mean, I think more and more companies are understanding this, and we've moved, again, I haven't been in the CSR space for very long. I ran marketing at Cisco for a while before this, but we've seen a real move from this legacy of just check writing or just making investments to being more programmatically focused. I mean, look what you guys are doing. Like, it's amazing. And like, thank God for you, because some of the most provocative and profound solutions are going to come from this kind of private sector innovation.
Yeah, that's great. Last question. What's next for Connected North?
More schools.
Yeah.
More schools. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we have 600. We have, like I said, I have 68, 78 on the wait list right now. And sustainability. You know, you don't go to the trouble of launching something unless you can be pretty damn sure that you can figure out a way that it can embed and be sustainable. I remember, quick story, I was in Nunavut in our pilot school a lot that first year. I was probably up every 6 weeks. And a little girl came up to me one day and she said, "Who are you? What are you doing here? You're here all the time." And I sort of explained who I was and what I was doing. And she said, "Oh, well, that's good." She said, "But I need to tell you something. If you say you're going to do something, you better do it, because so many people come to our school and they say they're going to do stuff and then we never see them again." And I remember coming back and saying to my boss, "We're not going to be that guy. Like, we're going to stick with this over the long term. And if we're going to talk new models and we're going to throw our weight around in Ottawa and go on and on and on about setting all these great expectations, we're not going to get over our skis. We're going to be damn well sure we can deliver on it. And we've thought this through." And so it was great. You know, Axgarneet was our first school, and they're the one that's the most self-sustainable right now, which is great. So.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It's really encouraging to see how leveraging IT can have such an incredible impact on kids that are in these remote locations. So it's a great job. So we're going to move into our sort of roundtable conversation where we've got a couple of topics that we've identified, and then I'm going to be asking the panelists some questions on those. So the first one is AI and sustainability, and this is a really interesting topic. I'm not an expert in this matter. Funny enough, my brother-in-law is. He works for Amazon, and he's currently writing a book on artificial intelligence. So once it gets published, I will try and read through it, but I probably will not understand half of it. So, you know, this is a great example of a local company leveraging AI to make a difference around sustainability. Brad Pilgrim runs a company called Parity, and they became the first company to develop an AI-powered energy management platform for multi-residential buildings. And really it was developed with his goal of reducing energy waste. And the outcome of this since 2017 is that this AI tool has prevented an estimated 15 million pounds of CO2 emissions from entering our atmosphere. And when we look at the graphic on the right, we can see the impact that it can have in just one building. This is a 13-story building with 300 units. And they recognized a 36% energy savings. And imagine if we could roll that out across, you know, the world and the impact that we could have on reducing energy use. I really like this example too because it's very visual. This is Google. They've implemented AI into their data centers. And if you've ever been in a data center before, they're interesting places. They're generally dark, loud, lots of fans, and they're cold, because those servers and storage devices need to be run at a certain temperature. So they require a lot of energy to keep them running and cool. And what Google did was they implemented AI to reduce their energy usage. And you can see the power usage before machine learning was turned on and the dramatic impact it had once it was turned on. And the peaks with machine learning on are significantly lower than the valleys when it's turned off. And as a result, they were able to reduce their energy usage by 40%, which is pretty crazy. One more example of AI and sustainability, and I'd like to thank Rue for sharing this with me. Rue is a member of our team at Compugen, and she's a graduate of the Masters in Sustainability program here. And Rue sent me this graphic over, and the caption is, "America is drowning in garbage, but now robots are being put on duty to help solve the recycling crisis." So US companies and researchers are using AI-assisted robotic technology that will help actually sift through waste to make sure that we increase our recycling rates. So it's pretty cool to see this happen. And also, it's actually a dangerous job for humans to do. So, leveraging AI technology and robots, I think, is actually a very positive thing. So, Robert, I know that Microsoft has invested $50 million into cloud and artificial intelligence resource for sustainable projects. Are you able to talk about one?
Well, the overall AI Earth effort was launched by our Chief Environmental Officer, December of 2017. And we've done we give grants, we give access to our data scientists, and we give access to our computing power to individuals who have great ideas about measuring, measurement and AI application around the world. The goal is to kind of get the data, get the insights so that humans can make better decisions. And to date, we've been giving grants to over 400 organizations since December 2017. And an example of some of the things we're doing there, we worked with a group called Ocean Mind, and we've mapped the Earth using high definition photographs and imagery of the ocean. So we monitor these on an ongoing basis, and we feed these into an AI engine, an artificial intelligence engine that looks for anomalies or things that are out of ordinary, with the goal of stopping overfishing. Right? So if you see a boat that's been out there for too long, or if you see more boats come in that aren't supposed to be there, you can flag those to the authorities and investigate them.
Yeah, that's very cool. And when I kicked off this conversation, a couple of those latter ones around smart farming, smart agriculture, green buildings are all leveraging artificial intelligence, which is really exciting. And I see this as being a big part of the future when it comes to IT and sustainability. So the adoption of sustainability and corporate social responsibility has really grown significantly over the last decade. And I'm curious, I'd just like to ask the audience, why do you think that is? Why do you think there's more awareness around this today than there was 15, 20 years ago? Yes? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely one of them. Any other guesses? Yes?
Is it the, I'll say, millennial generation that tend to care a little bit more about this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and certainly you are right about the, we're getting close to like that sort of peak. But one of the reasons why we're seeing more awareness around it is because of millennials. They think differently than their parents did, and Gen Z as well. They want to buy from companies that have sustainability built into their product and purpose, and they also want to work for companies that promote sustainability and corporate social responsibility. So millennials now represent the largest percentage of consumers in North America, as well as the largest percentage of potential employees in Canada. So it's important that organizations are recognizing that and doing the right thing around sustainability and the environment. When we look at the values that millennials share, I mean, they're all fantastic. All 7 of the top ones that have been listed are incredible. But if you'll notice, the 2 on the top that are in line with what we're talking about today are sustainability and the circular economy, environmental protection like zero waste, recycling, and greenwash. So for corporate social responsibility to drive value and have impact, companies need to adopt a long-term and formal plan that engages leadership, employees, customers, and communities of operation. So I'm going to ask Willa, how is Cisco engaging their employees around corporate social responsibility today?
Sorry. Last week, Great Places to Work named Cisco the #1 best workplace in the world out of 8,000 companies that applied and 500 on the short list. And so the leadership team had a presentation from this organization, and we looked at all the metrics around what contributed to us getting this distinction. And it was absolutely amazing to see how high on the list, your values or our employees' values were aligned to corporate values mattered. It was like #2, I think. And I think our employees take an enormous amount of pride in a lot of our CSR programming, but we look at our employee engagement, as I'm sure these other organizations do as well, as such a strong driver of culture. You know, first and foremost, creating a psychologically safe culture, an inclusive culture, walking the talk, making sure employees feel valued, and also being able to give our employees an opportunity, to your point on millennials, to commit to some kind of social activism, philanthropy, volunteerism, whatever they want to do. We offer employees matching gifts of up to $10,000 US per person per year for all their donations. And we think about that. That's like amazing. We also offer our employees $25,000 US per person for mental health services as part of our benefits program. So more and more, you know, I think that we are seeing that, and it's been a really interesting shift. I mean, I've been working an awfully long time. We realize that we come to work with people every day, and people have their own sense of values and goals and responsibilities, and not 100% of them are work related. And so I think giving our employees the support as individuals, giving them lots of opportunity and variety to engage whatever their civic engagement may be. I mean, we have lineups of engineers who want to go up into our schools in the north and install stuff. It's amazing. We do an incredible amount of volunteerism at Cisco, but ensuring that we address that and that we're creating that really inclusive workplace. So,
yeah, that's great. Thank you, and congratulations. That's a great honor. Francis, I'd like to ask you, with all the great things that HP is doing around sustainability with respect to manufacturing, how is HP engaging their employees around CSR and sustainability?
Well, you saw that 80 years ago, our founding fathers said, you know, it's everybody's responsibility. So we've had a formal volunteering policy. Every employee gets 4 hours a month of paid time to volunteer on whatever they want. And part of my job is actually in Canada to figure out, and I work globally, to figure out how can we have the most impact with those volunteer hours. Obviously, we've got very highly skilled employees who want to line up to do volunteer events, so providing the right opportunities for them. One of the things I've started doing with my really keen employees is making them almost partner business managers with the nonprofits that we work with, which allows them to step up to a sort of managerial function and learn a lot from how you work with the nonprofit sector, because it's very different, and working in the far north is even more different. So giving them that ability to spread their wings and test themselves and actually develop deeper and more meaningful relationships and partnerships with our nonprofits that are long-term partnerships too. So but there's some people who just want to go and pick up garbage for a day. You know, that's you have to offer all kinds of options along with the just straight cash matching for employees as well. So but it needs to be a cultural thing. Like if it's difficult for an employee to access their volunteer hours, they're not going to do it. So having that formal policy of written down, obviously they have to get their manager's approval, but and seeing the monkey talk, monkey do thing, it's very important to see the senior managers out there actually walking the talk as well on volunteerism.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Our next topic is on the circular economy, and I'm just curious, has anyone heard of the Chico bag before? No? Okay. So they're a B Corp out of California, and they actually manufacture multi-use bags using recycled plastics. And he got his inspiration when he went to a landfill and he saw the number of plastic bags that were just flying around, and he thought, you know, I need to do something about this. So they actually won the 2018 Best for the World Environment Award at the B Corp conference, and he was a panel member, and it was a really educational panel on recycled plastics and single-use plastics, and it's pretty scary stuff. And I do remember at the end of that, he challenged everyone in the room to, you know, stop using single-use plastics, and I got to the airport and I was forced to use a single-use plastic. I couldn't even get back to Canada. So, you know, we've got a lot of work to do with respect to single-use plastics, but I love the innovation that this gentleman has made. So, Francis, you mentioned that 96% of CEOs agree that the economy, circular economy, is key to a future success. And you mentioned that only 18% on average of companies are actually doing something about it. So it's great that they're saying that, but what can we do as consumers to help push companies to this model?
Well, I would say that every dollar you spend, no matter what good or service you're buying, you need to attach those social and environmental considerations to it. And it's hard to do, I absolutely admit. I tried a couple of months of no single-use plastics myself with a WWF challenge. And at one point I found myself on my hands and knees in the supermarket looking for bags that other people had dropped, because in my head, oh, that's a double use then, because it would have been thrown away otherwise. So I can justify using this bag. My clamshells were used for planting seedlings. Like, you're always trying to, but it's very, very hard. So leveraging eco labels is one of the simple things. Educating yourself about the eco labels that are out there, whether it's organic, whether it's fair trade, whether it's Energy Star. There's a lot of ready-made tools that you can leverage. And I think we have to tackle this head on, that there's a perception that a more sustainable product is always more expensive. I don't think that's necessarily true, but I think you get what you pay for in this world. And I gave a lecture at Schulich not too long ago, and I asked why, who in the room had thought about the social and environmental performance of the electronics company that they chose to do business with last time they bought their last piece of electronics, whatever it was. Only one person put their hand up. And I said, well, if not you guys, then who? And why not? And this one lady said, well, I was pretty sure there was some child labor in the supply chain, and I actually didn't want to know. Which scared the heck out of me, because if people are too afraid to ask the question, then we really have a problem. And the great thing about the circular economy is it's a more transparent economy. I would argue that one of the reasons we have the problem with the recycling programs that we have in Canada today is that they're not transparent. If people knew that a lot of the plastic they were sorting and putting in their blue bins was actually going in the garbage or being burnt, they wouldn't do it anymore. They'd be asking and demanding for better performance. So transparency, particularly in supply chains, where if you come to my session this afternoon on sustainable procurement, you'll see that for most large organizations, so HP is a 55,000 person company globally. And we are the only tech company who's disclosed our full carbon footprint to this date, and we're on year 4 or 5 now. Only 1% of our footprint is in our own operations. It's nearly 50% in our supply chain and 50% of our customers using our products. So if you're not disclosing what's going on in your supply chain, and you're not tackling how you help your customers reduce their carbon footprints, you're missing the mark. And most organizations are still today only working in that 1%. So we really got to amp the oomph on that. And you will do that as consumers by asking the questions. How many people saw the tea bag thing, that tea bags have plastic in them and there's a horrible amount of plastics in your tea? So I wrote to my favorite tea company and I said, I want to know whether there's plastic in my tea bag. It took me 4 emails to get the answer, yes, there is some plastic in your tea bag. Now, and this is a great company that I do business with, and I would not change companies because I know they're doing a whole bunch of other great stuff. It's fair trade tea, blah, blah, blah. But it took me 4 emails of deliberately asking. At one point they said some man-made materials. It's like, okay, I'm not stupid. I know what man-made materials are, right? So you have to keep asking those questions. And companies are really good at responding to what their customers are asking them to do. That's why we exist. We exist to make customers happy. If you ask the questions, you demand for the information, companies will start to disclose it. It will become more transparent and we'll all benefit.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you. You know what? I think we'll use that as the last Q&A of the day from me, at least. And we've just got a couple minutes left, so I wanted to see if there are any questions from the audience for anyone who's on the panel, and that would be great. Yeah, please.
I had a question for you. It's always good to hear you speak. Last time I heard you at the you talked about your marketing team who were initially reluctant on advertising the fact that the laptop had used technicals. So how did you overcome that challenge?
So I'll take a step back. That was when we first introduced recycled content into our cartridges. It was, by the time we got to the laptop, everybody was gung-ho and tripping over themselves of how can we market this. So that's an evolution from 10 years ago to today. But absolutely, when we first started putting closed loop recycled plastics into our ink cartridges, our marketing team, you know, the ink boxes are pretty small. So, and you have 3 languages, it's pretty hard to. And the problem, and you know, I have Clara sitting here, her job is a sustainability marketing expert. It's really hard to tell a story around sustainability where you're not greenwashing, where you put it in simple enough terms. We had one example where we had jingle and our marketing team wanted us to put it in 3 words. And we agonized. We could not come up with just 3 words to describe what was a sustainability attribute of this product. 2 words, right? So it's complicated, but I think part of it is that transition from, well, if it's got recycled content, A, it should be cheaper, and B, it will be of lower quality. We have to get over that, right? We've proven that we can meet the quality requirements, and then pretty exacting in a high-tech product. But we have to get over this perception, A, that it will always be more expensive, or that it will be a lower quality, and it's changing mindsets. And I think we're getting there. You know, as I said, with the most recent products, our marketing team are tripping over themselves. How do we tell this story? So I'm very happy to. And the fact that we have a full-time person working on sustainability marketing is a pretty good example of that. Great question, thank you. Wow, right there.
Is that rare for companies?
Yep, it's pretty rare. So we've been doing some very leadership stuff. But, you know, we've been doing this stuff for decades. Nobody knew about it. We have to, you know, you now have to start telling the story, but you have to do it in a way that our lawyers are happy and that we're happy. You know, the term environmentally friendly doesn't mean anything. We're very careful about how we use the word green. You know, it's complicated, and sustainability is complicated, which is why we've invested so heavily in sustainability education. And a little bit of a sneak peek here. I'm actually on the board of an organization called Learning for a Sustainable Future. We work in the K-12 space. We just conducted a sustainability literacy survey, which we are not putting out during the federal election campaign for obvious reasons, but we will be issuing this post-election, and I'd encourage you all to take a look at that data. It's very sobering data, which is why I do fundraising, so Canadian teachers can actually learn what they need to be able to teach. So.
Go ahead.
Firstly, thank you. So I guess my question pertains to Willa and Cisco. So you were saying how, you know, like the lawyers exploded when you were trying to bring this across, or when the student at one of the schools had said, you know, like, please stick to what you're doing and more for the long term. So based on that, how do you create, as a sustainability student, pursuing, you know, like the private sector, how do you create that business case for sustainability to your, you know, like shareholders and different stakeholders, and get this project through?
That's a really, really good question. And you know, it's funny, when we first started doing the work on Connected North, I don't think we really did believe that it would scale up to the way it did, as fast as it did. And I think the really important, oh, sorry, I'm sorry, I keep doing that. I think what I really learned right off the bat was this whole idea of alignment, and going to the different organizations throughout Cisco. And we're a reasonably young company. We're only, you know, 35 years old. And we did have a fairly well-developed CSR department in the US and CSR capability and program, not so much in Canada though. So it was a really painstaking 2-year-long process of saying that we need this because it's going to benefit our brand, because our stakeholders care about it, because our employees are demanding it increasingly. So the business case was, you know, as time evolved, it sort of became a bit self-evident that if you're going to operate in this country, and if you're going to run $1 billion plus, you know, operation, you have a responsibility and an obligation to make an impact and to give back. So that was kind of the starting point. But then it was going to marketing, you know, getting the buy-in from them. Then it's going to sales, because, you know, we're an overlay function, so we're taking away resources and from their organization. Then it's going down to the US. Are you okay if Canada does this? Are we aligned to what you're doing? Okay, sort of good, you know. And it really, so getting that buy-in and not making a move until we had it, and then as soon as we started getting results, being very transparent, being very focused on updates. Here's our success. You know, I've said this before. It's an interesting thing when you work in a sales organization. a win is a win. And I remember, and we've got like that winning culture in sales. And so I would go into our leadership team meetings and say, guys, we're up to 40 schools. They go, really? We're in 40 schools? And so we built this kind of momentum. And we had employees involved in fundraising. We had employees introducing their customers to us. Like we had employees going into community. We actually have a program where we give them a full week off. We had people spending a week up in some of our communities, and it was all good. And it all sort of fed into this larger narrative around leaving a legacy in this country and leaving this model for experiential learning where it was needed most. And I think that was very validating.
That's great. I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll have to wrap up. So any last questions? Yes.
Well, this is a question regarding the circular economy. Can you imagine establishing a service that individuals would buy that would prevent or would take over from the tendency to buy like a phone or a laptop?
Well, it almost could seem like I paid you to ask that question, but yes. We actually have the world's fastest growing business to consumer play in the circular economy. It's called Instant Ink, and it's so brilliant. I wish I had thought of it. So it's taking a very broken business model, which is the home ink printing model. It's a razor blade model today. You have to compete in a very price competitive marketplace where a consumer expects to be able to buy a printer for $49.99. You cannot make a high quality printer for that price. So you have to sell the printer at a loss and then try and recoup your profit back up on selling the supplies, which is a disincentive for your customer to use your product. So it's crazy, but you're stuck in that marketplace. How do you break out of that and still stay in business? So somebody at HP thought up of Instant Ink. So you're signing up for a subscription service based on how much you want to print. So for as low as $3.99 a month, you can print, I don't even remember how many, it's like 50 pages or something. So the customer is really happy here because they get the low price, they get the convenience of the printer ordering the ink next time they need it. Mine arrived yesterday in a nice little simple small brown paper box. We ship a recycling bag in the box, so it's very convenient for the customer. We get more cartridges back that way so we can keep them going around. It's great. So convenient and brilliant for the customer. I've not heard a single customer complain about this. They all rave about it. It is good for the business because now you have a steady annuity stream, which is what all businesses like, steady state. But the footprint reductions are significant, plus the amount of cartridges we get back. So what's not to like about that, and it's our first toe in the water in the consumer circular economy space, and it's growing leaps and bounds. We're just really happy with it. And it's proof that it can be done. And I think you can just expect to see more companies starting in this.
That's great. Oh, that's great. Thank you. I just want to thank everyone for coming to this panel today. We really do appreciate you coming and hearing what we have to say around IT and sustainability. And I want to thank our panelists, Willa, Robert, and Francis, for taking the time out of their very busy schedules to participate in this. So thank you very much. Have a great day.